Me. Uh, First, in fact, let me thank IMPRI for organizing this session, and also because two of my old friends are here, and friends have made through IMPRI, or rather, contacts I've made through IMPRI, like Major General Chakravarti, whom I've heard earlier too. It was nice being here and listening to all of you. Uh, in fact, being the last speaker, much of what I have to say has already been said, especially by Swaran. And so it's going to be a kind of revamp. And in fact, let me put it the other way. I mean, a bit of twist in these asking certain questions. Uh, Basically, this is a very important topic because India's aspiration is not only Viksit Bharat, but this Viksit Bharat should be a player in the world stage. Of course, foreign policy and defense are very, very important. And I'm glad that you're putting them together because they are so interconnected. And I thank you for inviting me, Dr. Simi Mehta and Dr. Arjun Kumar, especially. Now, of course, it need not be repeated here that we live in a very volatile world and it's full of uncertainties. And basically, a single event can sometimes trigger off conflagrations, like we saw in Israel, a terrorist attack, which has led to, in fact, a couple of years of, basically destruction of Gaza and attacks on the West Bank, also against the Hezbollah. Uh, Also, to a certain extent, maybe it was connected to Assad's fallout. So I'm finally leaving, all right, Syria. Also, realignments in the entire Maastricht area, uh, falls to other provinces, has impacted India too, because before that, we are planning the I2, U2, things like that. Also, communications through basically the UAE and Iran and Israel. So all this has been affected. So basically, foreign policy has been affected, diplomacy has been affected. Although, and so far as defense is concerned, we also had problems, all right, with the Houthi. I mean, we have no problems with the Houthi, but they have been attacking Indian ships too. So therefore, uh, well, basically, one international event somewhere else can, in fact, jeopardize, India. So therefore, basically, defense and budget, as well as basically the allocations to the MEA, are very important because money, after all, drives global power. All right, and in fact, without uh, a good budget, without basically enough provisions, it is very difficult for a country to become a major power. Um, so therefore, it is important to examine the budget in order to get an idea of how India is planning to meet its challenges globally and in its immediate neighborhood. Uh, I will briefly comment on the defense and MEA budgets because much has already been said, starting from, in fact, IMPRI itself, which has given a summary of the two budgets. And then we'll analyze the challenges of doing more with less. Because if you really compare it to other countries, our uh, entire budget is not all that much, and our defense budget and foreign policy budget, MEA budgets, these are also not as much as that of the United States or basically China. And in fact, even Poland, of course, it doesn't spend that much in money, but it spends at least 5% of its GDP on defense, given the uncertainties of the emerging world with Ukraine. Now, it must be remembered that the budget theme this year, which was I pointed out right in the beginning, is Sabka Vikas, aiming, in fact, at Viksit Bharat by 2047. And here, of course, the priority is the domestic sector, emphasizing agriculture, employment, health, manufacturing, basically employment-led development, building rural prosperity, and all this within the kind of 50 lakh plus crore uh, 2025 26 budget of which interest payments will take about 25%. So that leaves us not with much. So while defense and foreign policy are of utmost importance, uh, well, domestic concerns are of even greater importance if we are, because without basically domestic growth, I mean, how can we achieve a Viksit Bharat, which will be a player in the world? A player, I'm saying, not a power yet, but even a player. Okay. Now, the defense budget of 6.8981 lakh crores is 9.52% more than the previous year's budget, but it is still only 1.9% of the projected GDP. When compared to the revised estimate for the previous year's 6.41 crores, the actual increase is actually only just 6%. On the other hand, the overall budget for the MEA is only 20,516 crores, lower than the 2024-25 budget. Although, in fact, one must point out that so far, in fact, the allocation for the Exim Bank has not yet been included. It will be probably added later. The allocation of 20,516.61 crore is an increase of 15.5% over last year without allocation towards the Exim Bank. We basically cut that out. Yet the allocation to the MEA is only, well, much, much less than 1%, between 0.6%, 0.4%, and 0.6% of the total government expenditure. Now, India's stature in the world is growing, and money power, I repeat, always backs world power. This is the issue, therefore, is whether India's budget allocation is sufficient for India's aspirations in the global arena. Now, let me first focus on the defense budget, although, in fact, Major General Chakravarti has really given a very good breakdown of it and has pointed out the challenges that it faces. But basically, let me point out that the budget, if you really look at it, it tries to balance modernization, deterrence, and self-reliance. But India employs over 1.47 million active troops in armed forces, and there are a huge number of pensioners. The allocation for revenue expenditure, which includes salaries, allowances, and operational preparedness, which means you see long-term stay on naval ships as well as near the borders, this stands at 3,11,732.30 crores, or 45.76% of the total budget. Defense pensions take up 1,60,795 crores, which is over 23%. Now, this seems disproportionate when compared to the capital budget for modernization, including procurement of new fighter jets, drones, artillery guns, tanks, helicopters, which saw only a modest increase of 8,000 crores, that is from rupees 1.72 lakh crores to rupees 1.80 lakh crores. However, the armed forces were unable to fully utilize, as has been pointed out by Annapurna, Swaran, and Major General Chakravarti. They could not utilize last year's capital budget, returning 13,000 crore to the government. The capital outlay allocation of 1,80,000 crores is below 5% of the defense budget. Out of this, 1,48,723 crores is planned to be spent on capital acquisition, while the remaining, that is only 31,277 crores, is for capital expenditure on research and development, R&D, and creation of infrastructural assets. I don't know if this is enough, especially given the kind of competition that we are facing in China and the United States, and of course in Europe. Now, trying to basically promote its Make in India policy, 75% of the modernization budget has been earmarked for procurement through domestic sector. 25% of the domestic sources will be procured from homegrown private industries. In absolute terms, this means that about 20,000 crores will be purchased from the private sector defense companies of India. Before critiquing any of this, let me also point out that 7,000 crores has been allocated to Border Roads Organization to help complete critical infrastructure. Like tunnels, etc. And also, there has been a 43% hike in the capital budget for the Indian Coast Guard. Given, in fact, the importance of the Indian Ocean in India's security, this is very necessary, especially in the context of what happened in Mumbai a few years back. So basically, the whole place has to be monitored. Now, having said this, let me ask whether the rhetoric of Make in India is realistic given current indigenous capacities. One must understand that the nature of warfare is changing from personnel intensive to technology intensive warfare, focusing on AI, artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, space based defense capabilities, and high tech air warfare that includes AWACS, airborne warning and control systems, combat aircraft, mid air refuelers, etc. The Indian Air Force faces critical deficiencies like an aging transport fleet, and in fact, it operates uh, 32 squadrons against the requisite 42 squadron. Uh, but new acquisitions are costly, as has been pointed out. Uh, uh, Let me just give an example that just 26 naval variant Rafale fighters cost 63,000 crores. The Indian Navy uh, needs enlargement, and the army needs to prepare for electronic warfare and needs modern surveillance equipment, among other things. But this is very important. Now, with threats on the India China border, with China having a clear edge in roads, telecom, AI, hardened logistics installations that are vital to sustain high intensity military campaigns uh, in the future, the capital allocation and for R&D is perhaps not enough. India still remains one of the world's largest arms importers and has yet to make, in fact, things like jet engines. We are dependent on other countries for the purchase of jet engines. And basically, domestic production suffers serious capability gaps in critical technologies. More allocation is needed for training uh, and for collaboration with foreign manufacturers to develop sixth generation technologies, but that would cost at least 40,000 to 50,000 crores, according to defense experts. However, uh, India aspires to be a great power abroad, and that requires increased defense spending on defense preparedness for next generation wars. If we compare the defense allocations in the budgets of US, China, and India, this will become clear. The US basically gets 849.8 billion dollars, uh, that is $849.8 billion in military funding, which is actually 3.2% of its GDP. China's defense budget, in fact, what you showed in the beginning, it said something more, but the figures I got was about 1.5% of the GDP. But of course, China, you are never sure. The figures could be much higher. And basically, what we are overlooking also is that it uses dual use investments in civil military technologies. And so, therefore, in fact, that is not counted in the well defense spending, but it's very much part of it. Okay, so it's kind of integrated there. Now, India's defense budget, and here again, my figures, and that is probably because of well changes, as Major General Chakravarti pointed out, in well, basically the dollar exchange rate. But the figure I got was $78.1 billion or 6.81 lakhs, which is of course a lakh crores, which is of course fixed. This is nothing compared to that of the US or China. But given India's financial capabilities, India has to optimize resources, prioritize innovations, and balance conventional and next generation warfare investments while cutting costs through multi domain integrated operations and also bringing in funds through defense exports, which it's already doing by developing new R&D. What we need, of course, is new technologies, not just old technologies. If we want to interest, in fact, the high pair powers, all right, those who pay for our, all right. Now, so far as foreign policy is concerned, it is interlinked with defense policy, with diplomacy including not only peace but defense preparedness and war. India's ambitions as a global leader, where it can be an influencer global decisions making. Uh, Basically, it starts with its own neighborhood. All right, of course, we start at home. All right, whatever we do, we start at home, so it's its own neighborhood. And so it is not surprising that the MEA has prioritized its neighborhood first policy, India's neighborhood first policy, like the previous years, and has allocated 64% of its 5,483 crores aid for foreign countries to its neighbors, focusing uh, in building large infrastructure projects like hydroelectric plants, power transition lines, housing, roads, bridges, and basically integrated checkpoints. Okay. Now, basically, Bhutan, as has been pointed out again and again, continues to be India's largest foreign aid recipient with uh, 2,150 crores, followed by the Maldives, 600 crores. Nepal, of course, remains constant at 700 crores. Myanmar, 350 crores. Bangladesh, 120 crores. Now, the emphasis on Bhutan is not surprising, for it is very important to our defense, given its neighbor China, who would be very happy to have close relationships with Bhutan. India's investment, in fact, if we really look at what India is trying to do, investment is not just based on traditional ties, but it also is linking Bhutan closer to India. If you look at many of the organizations which have been being formed, there's, whether it's BIMSTEC or, well, not only BIMSTEC, there are these other ones which actually includes Bhutan. So linking Bhutan closer to India by helping build hydroelectric infrastructure and buying electricity from Bhutan, and basically military and other communication systems that tie it closer to India. The fact that there has been no increase in allocation to Nepal also is a reflection of India-China and India and Nepal-China relations. Bangladesh's allocation remains at 120 crores also. This is, well, one reason, of course, is that some projects have been completed, but also given the uncertainties in Bangladesh, it has probably not been increased this year. But what is a bit disappointing is the low increase of allocation to African nations from 200 crores to 225 crores. Um Also, basically, the allocation to Latin America, which was estimated to be around 90 crores, it is only now 60 crores. And basically, a static amount of 100 crores to the Chabahar port in Iran. The port needs to be completed, but given, of course, as Swaran Singh has pointed out, the uncertainties of the Trump administration, one is not sure when it's going to be completed, but it should be a priority. Uh, uh, Basically, so far as African nations are concerned, China has a major footprint there. Uh, but India, therefore, needs to basically promote its soft diplomacy, certainly over there, to gain influence. And if India wants to be a global power, or even a global South power, I mean, basically a leader of the global South or one of the leaders of the global South, it needs to basically, well, have good relations with Latin American countries. Now, this year's budget emphasizes economic diplomacy. The finance minister spoke of basically revamping the current model of bilateral investment treaty, the BIT, to make India more attractive to foreign investors. In the insurance sector, the government plans to allow overseas investors to fully own insurance companies, revising the FDI limit of 74%, but only on the condition that these companies should invest the entire premium in India. Now, this may be an obstacle, as are India's tax provisions. India is being sued currently by Volkswagen for demanding what it says are unfair, excessive taxes. Well, India is, of course, challenging it, but even Tesla has complained of high taxes. Now, as mentioned earlier, the MEA has received only 0.4% of the total budget. Uh, India's foreign policy ambitions are big, but the size of the foreign service remains static, and there is a disconnect between India's foreign policy ambitions and the current diplomatic infrastructure. It still has about 4,500 personnel and only around 1,000 IFS officers in its 200 missions. And the MEA needs basically significant reforms to cope with India's rising global profile. Before I end, I want to point to two developments in the international arena. One close to India, the other a bit far, but of course, both of them will have a major impact on foreign policy and its defense in the future. Now, one, of course, is the current developments in Bangladesh, which is a stark reminder that instability in relations will come suddenly. Uh, One cannot ignore threats to cut off the chicken neck, which actually connects us to the Northeast. So this will mean if anything happens, the Northeast will be, and we're talking about Act East policy. I mean, without the Northeast, basically, it makes sense, certainly, because we are still using sea routes. So the Northeast is very important to us. It's an integral part of India. Cannot have it cut off at all whatsoever. Now, why should we not ignore it? Because both Bangladesh and Nepal have good relations with China, and China's interests in the region are very well known. So both the MEA and the MOD need to prioritize this sector, one with its neighborhood first policy and the other with defense preparedness. Now, the other emerging dilemma is US President Trump's, who's been acting like what, a bull in a china shop. His policies may lead to tariff wars and cut down India's growth trajectory. When other speakers have been basically thinking about India as kind of stepping into, in case of, you see, if US aid is, AID is cut off and all that, into America's shoes, but we do not have the capacity to do anything like that. One of Trump's first decisions was to shut down the US AID. In the first 4 years, India has received about in the last 4 years, it has received about $650 million from USAID under the Biden presidency. Uh, the freeze on USAID in the Trump regime is expected to have the greatest impact on healthcare projects, which receive two-thirds of the allocations from US with the aid that was made to India. Environmental programs received about $9.6 million in 2023, and governance, which included spending on civil society organizations and social infrastructure, received $14 million. So these will be, well, impacted slightly. It's a good thing that, in fact, India is now food secure to a large extent. And therefore, in fact, well, the allocation for food security was nil, and this will not be impacted. Or for agriculture, a very minor amount was there. So that will not be impacted either. Now, the US AID freeze has been followed by the deportation of, uh, many Indian nationals. In fact, initially they said 205, now they're saying 105. But as Dr. Major General Chakravarti pointed out, that this was via a military plane. Now, why a military plane? Uh, One wonders. Now, so basically, these are allegedly illegal migrants. Uh, and basically, India has claimed uh, that they will take back illegal immigrants from any country as long as they're proven to be Indian nationals. Now, we do not want, even Pakistanis or Bangladesh dumped on us, and then we have to prove that they're not Indian nationals. Now, what is interesting is that the Pew Research data indicates that in 2022, 725,000 Indian nationals lived in the US as illegal immigrants. And if even half of these are deported, it may cause logistical problems and issues. Uh, so one has to look into that in the next year. Further, given Trump's announcement of trade tariffs on Canada and Mexico, two close allies and neighbors of the United States to basically implement, push through its own agenda. Uh, this indicates uncertainties of trade wars ahead, even though there has been a temporary pause uh, in the in the tariffs against Mexico and China. But then it has gone ahead with tariffs on Mexico and Canada. It has gone ahead with basically tariffs on China. One doesn't know if it's, because as Swaran Singh was pointed out, well, India does import oil from Russia, and whether the waivers are going to be taken. So, and this is all going to basically increase prices and cause a lot of problems so far as the budget is concerned. And there will have to be revisions. But, well, again, there is a certain capacity that India has. Now, how India will negotiate these issues? in the coming years is yet to be seen, especially given the global economic interdependencies. Tariffs on other countries will definitely also affect India. And here one must mention, of course, Trump's America First policy and the issue of H-1B visas, uh, which is a lifeline for Indian IT professionals. India's IT sector, one of the key is one of the key drivers of the country's economic growth, and this is heavily reliant on the ability to send skilled workers to the US under H-1B. Any cut down will spell a dip in revenue. And given the sector's contribution to GDP and employment, any disruption would be alarming since it would increase operational costs, reduce profits, and taxable income in India. Now, basically, I know that some of my uh, students and, in fact, relations, Netflix, for instance, has not renewed uh, uh, well, because they're so uncertain whether they would get H-1 reviews. They have not renewed contracts for some of their Indian or other foreign or nationals who are working for them. And this probably will be followed by Amazon, etc. So basically, well, it's a bit, uh, the whole thing is a bit uncertain. Now, Prime Minister Modi will be visiting, as we pointed out by Swaran Singh, on 12th February, visiting the United States and meeting President Trump. And one wonders what all are in the agenda and how things will work out. Now, they were friends earlier, all right? Allahabad, Trump Sarkar, if you remember. They were friends earlier. They went on very well. But so far, um, because of BRICS, because India has been kind of cultivating, to certain moving closer to Russia. Well, at least according to foreign experts, it's kind of consolidating its place in the global south and in other forums. Let's see how Trump looks at all that. Now, the defense and the MEA budgets, seen overall, seem to be on track. But when examined closely, one sees many gaps which should be carefully studied and filled by balancing allocations in a judicious manner. The world is full of uncertainties. It has always been, but today it seems to be even more so. And we have to get the maximum out of what has been allocated. Uh, Remembering that India's population is now the largest in the world, and the primary focus, of course, is on the common man and his needs of health, education, employment, and security.